A side, B side, what side are you on?
What's up, Adam?
Hey, Brooke, I am doing well. Yourself?
Good. In case you didn't know, this is A Side, B Side podcast. I'm Adam Weingarten. That's Brooke Summers.
Absolutely. My voice is much lower, mostly because of all the cigarettes.
Stop it. You don't even smoke.
No, I'm Brooke. Brooke doesn't.
Oh, Brooke, please don't say that because my mom's going to think I really
now we're going to get in trouble.
Your mom's going to be mad at me. My mom's going to be mad at me. It's going to be a thing. I don't really smoke, okay?
Yeah, no, just smoking hot takes. That's it.
So, of course, because we record on Wednesday. So tonight, the last 3 episodes of Love is Blind has been released. The last 3 of the season. And then they have the reunion.
The reunion show, yeah.
So one couple last week, I don't want to spoil it for you. I'm excited to see where this goes. That's all I'll say.
So there was some drama that needs some questions need to be answered type of thing.
Yeah, well, because they left us kind of wondering with one couple. One couple, we know how it goes. Another couple, they kind of left us like with a cliffhanger. So It's like, will they or won't they? So we'll find that out. And then the other 3 couples will find out whether or not they get married.
And so they're all at the getting married stage. This is,
yes.
They've done the honeymoon. They've now they're getting to meet the parents, plan the wedding.
No, they are at the wedding. Like they've already met the parents. Okay. They've done the honeymoon. They've met the parents. They've met the friends. This is do or die time. This is, are we saying yes or no?
The moment of truth.
Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to see what happens. I have my thoughts, but I don't want to ruin it for you.
Oh, I have so many things to watch that I have not even considered watching it. There's so many other things that I've got to get through. So you will not ruin it for me. Maybe it would ruin it for anybody else. But I don't think that's going to be on my list right away.
Now I know you, like me, I think, are a Stanley Tucci fan.
Yeah, I mean, I like him. I think it was interesting. There was one, I don't know if it was SNL or one of the late night shows. Stanley Tucci had that whole thing on CNN where he was basically just eating gelato. And so CNN's like, hey, we're not going to spend all this money anymore. They're like, maybe that was a weird plan. Like, I didn't really get that series. They're like, oh, let's just eat Stanley Tucci, go eat some food.
Let's just watch Stanley Tucci eat. Well, he's got a new show on Netflix that is really good. It's 4 episodes. It's Stephen Moffat, who's the creator. Stephen Moffat is also the creator of Doctor Who. So it's British based, which means it's not a whole lot of episodes. It's only 4 episodes.
Yeah, and he did the whole Sherlock series with Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman and all that as well.
Yep. So this one is Stanley Tucci, David Tennant are the 2 big stars that you would recognize. And then there's a couple other people like the warden. He's Adam, that he's the perfect that guy from that thing.
It's been a long time since I did that guy from that thing. I really need to do that again.
I think he'd be a perfect candidate because he's literally in just about everything. But it's 4 episodes and it is really interesting how they tie together these 2 completely different coast stories and how it all
and remind what is the name of the series?
Inside Man.
Okay. So that'll be I will. That's on my list. I really want to get into The Peripheral because that looks really good.
Oh, what's that?
That's the one with Chloe Grace Moretz where it's like sort of like there's a virtual world, but it's also time travel and like you're going into you're putting on the 3D headset and then you're going into the game, but the game is actually transporting you to the future. And then like the people from the future are coming back to get you because you're messing with the future. So it looks really interesting. And I haven't sat down and watched that. At this point, my biggest plan for tonight is the 10th episode of Andor, which is that series has gotten really, really good. And tonight,
oh, did you see they're doing another season now?
Another season of Andor?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, I hope they do, because it's been, I mean, there haven't been any space battles. There haven't been any lightsabers. I mean, the last 2 episodes, there's barely been, they're in jail, this, imperial facility, but it's so compelling and so good. And a lot of people have said that it feels a lot more like George Lucas's very first sci-fi film, THX 197 or something like that. That's not right. But there's 1138, the one he did before Star Wars, where it was a little bit more, a dystopian future type feel to it. And it's been so good. And of course, you've got Andy Serkis, who is now is just as himself, instead of being a costume character or a motion capture character, because he was the supposed big bad for the Daisy Ridley, John Boyega films, Snoke, I don't know. He turned out to be just not as impressive, but he's so good at it, and so rarely do you get to see his actual face, because he's always
in costume of some kind.
And so I'm very excited for tonight's episode, because everything is today's episode, it came out, I haven't watched it, but I made myself wait, because that's my reward after we do the work day and then we do the podcast. Then I get to watch the show that I've been waiting for all day. So that delayed gratification's new thing I'm trying. But that I'm really excited about. And there is just so much stuff out there that I know, like you mentioned was it The Patient?
Yes, The Patient.
Yes, so that's on my list. So there's a lot of things that I'm gonna have to get through before I hit Love Is Blind season 3.
Well, and White Lotus season 2 is now out. There's 2 episodes, because they're doing the whole. It's so funny that, like my mom says this all the time, like everything old is new again. And like, growing up, we did the weekly episodes. And then of course, with the Netflix is the binging, and, everything comes out at once. And now everybody is going back to their weekly episodes. Like even Netflix is now doing like weekly things, except with like major shows like Stranger Things.
But even with Stranger Things, they split it in 2.
Yeah, even with that, they split it. So it's just so funny how things are like, oh, well, now we got to go back to the weekly format. And it's like, we didn't want it when we had it. Like, give us our show.
Yeah. Well, it's like, oh, we now have sliced the bread. And then like 10 years later, like everyone loves baguettes. We got the sliced bread.
Right. I guess they feel
but this bread isn't sliced, and that's cooler. Oh, okay. All right.
You don't want your bread sliced,
no.
Right? But I guess they feel like if they release all the episodes and they have to keep coming up with content, and it's whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much content out there too. There's the new the John Krasinski as Jack Ryan is coming back for season 3 in December.
Yeah.
I mean, Black Panther comes out tomorrow.
Yes.
There's just
Friday.
so much to watch.
Friday.
But there are showings on Thursday here in the Twin Cities.
Are they doing the double feature showings there?
I have not heard of it. They might be, but I live in my little bubble, which is basically a small apartment, and I've missed a lot of stuff. But I know there are showings tomorrow night.
Okay.
So are they doing like the original Black Panther movie and then the new one back to back? Oh, that's
I know at Marcus Theaters they were doing that. They were doing the double feature, the original, but that was like tomorrow, and then of course the big release is on Friday.
Yeah.
So we're of course all excited for that. So
I've been watching. So they've been doing such a good job of promoting it. At least on like YouTube, there's like a new, like 1 or 2 minute. They're not trailers, and more like little featurettes, or like they focus on one character, and they're really doing a really good job of building the buzz. Even though I mean it's a Marvel movie, so it's got buzz, but I feel like the Black Adam movie, which was pretty big, and then now Black Panther, they're trying to get people back in the theaters. They're really putting it out there to get people back in, because I mean I used to be one that would go to a movie every week.
Yeah,
and I've been to the theaters once this year in 10 and a half months. It's crazy.
Well, and part of it too is like, when I was in Bowling Green, they had the Regal. I was part of the Regal Unlimited. Here, it's the program's just not quite the same. But with Movie Pass looking to come back out, I might be intrigued into going a little bit more often.
Yeah, up here in Minnesota, I guess they are doing the double feature tomorrow as well. So that's very
okay.
Cool.
Okay.
At AMC, which used to be my jam, but then I had the thing where it was like I could go to as many movies as I wanted for like $25 a month. And then they basically got rid of that thing because there were no movies out. So I stopped paying for it.
Yeah, that's what Regal did for a while during the pandemic. And then it was like, okay, well, we're coming back. And I was like, well, I'm moving. So no.
So thanks, but no thanks.
My mom, I think you'll find this really cool. So my mom and my stepdad are on their way right now to the Tina Turner musical, which I think it sounds phenomenal, and I can't wait to hear about that.
Okay.
And I really hope it like comes here, because I think that would be, her life is really cool. There's a point to this. So speaking of Tina Turner, I was talking about Ronnie Spector the other day with someone, because Ronnie Spector is freaking phenomenal, and had things not gone the way they did with Phil Spector, I think Ronnie Spector would have been on top of the world. But that conversation came because there is a new documentary out about Phil Spector. And Phil Spector, if you don't know, was a music producer, like big time, huge, got the big hair, helmet head, who is in prison for murder. But Ronnie Spector was his wife. They were an interracial couple. She's a Black female singer, and I mean like a powerhouse. But he basically like imprisoned her and like threatened her, and
didn't want her to become as big a star as she could have, because then she would leave him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Dude seems a little bit off his rocker.
But. Yeah. But there's a whole, I think it's on HBO. There's a whole, it's called Spectre, and Imagine Dragons did some of the music for that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to watch.
So much to watch.
This is episode 116. Oh my goodness. I was right.
You get to start.
Which means I get to start. Of course, it's a natural transition when we've just been talking about watching a lot of stuff, because on the A side, we talk about usually what Adam's been binging recently. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about Without a Trace, the CBS TV show that came out, early 2000s. And that led me to remembering Poppy Montgomery, who was one of the leads in that, and then stumbling upon this other series that I had completely missed, that came out a few years ago, called Unforgettable, which has one of the weirdest distinctions in that it is a show that was actually canceled twice.
What?
So it was canceled, and then there was so much going on, in the industry, that they decided, okay, we'll go back. But between season 1, so I binged all of season 1, and then I get to season 2, which came back after they canceled it, and without really addressing it, they drop the entire cast except the 2 lead characters and move them from just like working in the precinct in Queens as regular detectives to the major crimes unit in like this CSI style building with like all this tech and stuff in New York, and like never mention the rest of the cast that we spent an entire season with. They just drop them. And
it's like the youngest daughter on Family Matters. Just gone.
And so that, of course, led me to start thinking of like, a lot of shows have had to adjust. Sometimes it's like Saved by the Bell. You can only be in junior high and high school for so long. At some point, the characters are gonna get too old, or the actors are gonna get so old that you gotta, try Saved by the Bell the college years. Which I'm probably one of the few people that watched every single episode, but that was also such a big jump. They went from Saturday morning syndicated to primetime TV. That was just a bit of a bridge too far, and not everybody came along, and so it didn't work out. So I started looking at some shows that had a big stylistic change in the, from the first season, through the last season. And it wasn't always, right away. Sometimes it was halfway through the series. Sometimes, more often than not, it feels like at the very last season of something, they were like, let's just try this.
Mhm.
So today on the Ice Side, we're going to look at a bunch of shows that had big, setting changes or plot changes. And at the very end, we will talk about the thing that makes Steve Urkel and the Fonz connected.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to start off with a show that I did not watch as much as I think you probably did, Brooke.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But we all know that how big a Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan you are.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it had the spinoff with David Boreanaz's Angel.
Mm-hmm.
In all of the lists and all of the research I found, and of course, all of our sources are up on the website. You can go A-side-B-side podcast.square.site and check all of our links on there. This one popped up in every single list I could find, almost every list. And it was Angel, in that for 4 seasons, it's basically just, Angel, this detective agency, and they're, detectives, and they're doing the detective thing, and they're fighting against this big corporation, that, this law firm that's, somehow also vampires are involved. But in the 5th season, they decided to completely change the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And it became a legal drama with vampires, because the evil law firm, then Angel and his buddies, they take it over, and now it's a legal show.
Mm-hmm.
So to go from being, like a crime drama, with supernatural stuff, to a legal show with supernatural stuff, and everything I've read, and I have not seen it, but Brooke, did you see the 5th season?
Oh, I saw it repeated like multiple times. Yeah.
And when it happened, how did you feel about that? Because everything I've read, it seems like it was an unexpected twist.
Okay. So here's the thing. It was very unexpected. Didn't see it going that way. Because like you said, it was Angel and this private eye, private investigative agency. And he's, taking on the big bad, which, okay, the legal aspect was always kind of, or I shouldn't say was in it for a long time. But the shift that it took was like, okay, let's see if they can make this work.
And according to everything I read, it didn't really work.
It was meh.
It's amazing, though, when you look at David Boreanaz's career, like starting on Buffy, going to Angel, then getting Bones, and now he's got SEAL Team, right?
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, this dude has been like a leading man on television for like 25 years.
Yes.
Which is, it's many people, he's been on TV for a lot of people's lives, which is kind of crazy. So they tried something new to try to get Angel better ratings, and it didn't work. It ended up completely crashing and going away. But they're not the only one. One show that I know I watched every episode of, and I was so excited when I heard that this was going to happen. It was another spinoff of a very popular series, but the lead actor is somebody that I was a huge fan of from their 80s TV show. But in the 90s, David Hasselhoff is, riding high on Baywatch.
Mm-hmm.
But there's only so many years that you can write a story about, saving people from the water.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you're going to run out of plot lines. And in the mid to late 90s, they spun off Baywatch. So Mitch Buchanan, quits being a lifeguard and opens up a detective agency. And he's a
how
private
do you go
detective.
from lifeguard to detective?
Because you're David Hasselhoff. You can do whatever you want.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, he was kind of already doing investigations. Yeah. So I was very excited because I'm like, okay, this is cool. Detective agency. I always wanted to be a private eye. I think someday I will still probably try to get my private investigator license just to say I have it. It's very hard, though. In a lot of states, you have to have military and or police experience to even apply for the license. You can become, yeah, I've looked into it. You have to have like actual training. You can't just like take a test. You want to become a public notary? $30. That's it. You become a public notary without any effort whatsoever. But private detective, lots of restrictions on it. Never as easy as they make it seem on TV. So Baywatch Nights. So they spin it off of Baywatch. They get rid of being a lifeguard, but they're like, we're going to keep Baywatch as the name. So Baywatch Nights started out as just a private detective show, but it was the late 90s and everyone was searching for the thing that would get them the most ratings. And one of the most popular shows of the 90s was The X-Files. So someone decided about halfway through, about halfway through the first season into the second season, and it only lasted 2 seasons of Baywatch Nights, they were stopping being just a private detective agency that like looked into crimes and now dealing with monsters and aliens and all sorts of X-Files style nonsense. Because evidently just being Mitch Buchanan as a private detective wasn't getting enough attention. So they were like, let's throw in some Monster of the Week and see what happens. Baywatch Nights did not do well with their big change at the end. Another show that at the very end of it decided to go an entire different direction. And it was a show that I know a lot of people are fanatical about and one that I just never watched. And I've been told that I would really enjoy it. But for 8 seasons, the cast of Scrubs was the same group that was sort of wacky, but then oddly took on a lot of bigger issues. They often would make people cry as much as they'd make them laugh. And at the end of the 8th season, the season finale is called The Finale, because the writers were like, this story is over, that we're done doing this. We're not going to get renewed. We want to end this on a normal note. And they did the finale. And then the network is like, that was great. So much so, we want you to keep doing stuff. And the writers are like, well, we don't have any more story about these people to tell. So the 9th season of Scrubs was a completely different cast with a very young, like Dave Franco in it. And they switched the settings from the hospital to a university.
I remember that.
And it did not go well. It kind of crashed and burned. And of course, it got canceled eventually. But they were like, we want the name, but we're not bringing back hardly any of the original cast because we told that story. We're going to try a whole new thing, which can work. I mean, you look at a show like ER, which ran forever. And you had so many people coming and going, and that, you know, that seems to the medical hospital drama seems to lend itself to characters coming and going. I mean, I don't know if Grey's Anatomy is still running, but that felt like that ran forever, and they would have, you know, dozens of people switching in and out. So it can work, but for Scrubs, it kind of crashed and burned, and they did not make the big change over to a new cast like they thought they would. Speaking of X-Files, we know X-Files was a huge hit in the late 90s. So there were a lot of knockoffs that tried to kind of take that, whereas Baywatch Nights wanted to involve monsters. Then you had a show called Fringe, which started out very much like X-Files with, you know, this sort of government agency and the 2 leading characters, will they or won't they? And over time, it grew into a much more paranormal, like time travel and alternate dimensions, and got really, really weird. There was even a time jump at one point. So they started out wanting to be just like X-Files. It ended up so far away in a different way. But another one, if you like X-Files, it was kind of like X-Files, you know, light. It was a little bit after, a little bit better special effects, but not as good plots and not as good actors as well. Another great show that is a spinoff of a classic, Torchwood, which was a spinoff of Doctor Who.
Yes.
And Torchwood, I've seen every episode of Torchwood, but I haven't seen hardly any episodes of Doctor Who.
Which is funny because I have not seen any episodes of Torchwood, but I've seen almost every episode, pretty much every episode of Doctor Who, minus this last season.
It was very much a, you know, it's got John Harkness, what's his name? Hold on. I've got to get to the right screen. The character Jack Harkness was on Doctor Who, and they spun him off, and he had his own sort of, you know, government agency that dealt with aliens and things. And it was very, like, it was my jumping on point to the Doctor Who universe, because it existed within the same thing. And I really enjoyed it, but it seemed to be a little bit grittier, but it was also very, like, very British, but then like they were pushing the envelope in ways that they wouldn't in American television. It was more progressive for the time. And they finally got to season 3. And most of seasons 1 and 2 was very episodic, like, Monster of the Week style stuff, slight overarching plots that maybe carried 2 or 3 episodes, but, nothing that was as huge as what they did in season 3. Season 3 was Torchwood Children of Earth. And the entire series was about the question of, is aliens coming to Earth and saying, we're going to kill half the children on Earth or everyone on Earth dies. And it becomes sci-fi, but then also political, and like the idea of, how would society deal with this? And this is way before, the snap and Thanos and anybody talking about, the Avengers War, years before that. And it changed a series that was just sort of Monster of the Week and fun. And it made it so much that took the stakes got raised to just a ridiculous height, and the show rose to it. And I was very impressed by that. And season 4 kind of, didn't do as well, because they tried to kind of catch that lightning in a bottle a second time, and it didn't work as well. But Torchwood Children of Earth, if you could see that season, which when it premiered, it was all in one night or 1 week in consecutive nights. So we talked about kind of doing things differently, whether it's binge watching, but it became appointment television, because like you got to watch the next night, you got to watch and see what's going to happen. And so it was a big change, but it produced, in my opinion, most of these changes resulted in less good stuff. Like this actually improved, probably their best season is because of the change they made going from seasons 1 and 2 to season 3. So definitely worthwhile. And you can even just jump in and watch Torchwood Children of Earth by itself without having to watch the other series. I mean, the previous seasons will give you more details, and you'll know the characters better and yada, yada. But you can just watch that as a mini series and it completely holds up.
Okay.
So we've talked about a lot of sci-fi, and I mentioned way back at the beginning that the last thing that we would talk about is what makes Steve Urkel and the Fonz the same.
Yes.
So both of their characters started out as bit parts of a larger family sitcom. Steve Urkel was just the neighbor on Family Matters, and the first few episodes of season 1 really focused on the Winslow family, not on Urkel at all, until he shows up and becomes a huge hit, and everyone remembers that the show gets reworked around Urkel. Well, the same thing had happened 20 years, 30 years earlier with Happy Days. Happy Days was a family comedy starring, focused on Richie Cunningham, young Ron Howard, kind of going through the life of growing up and being a teenage boy in the 60s and finding his way in the world. And it was okay, but it didn't really pop until the Fonz became more and more of a central character. By, later seasons, it's basically the Fonzie show with like Richie and his buddies kind of around a little bit, but Fonz moves in above the garage. He becomes, this sort of mentor figure. He becomes the soul of the show.
His
Granted,
cousin
that
Chachi
eventually
comes along.
Eventually, him being the soul of the show also led to one of my favorite, terms that we talk about now. Jumping the shark. They knew that Happy Days was over when Fonz in jeans and a leather jacket is skiing and water skiing and jumps over a shark in one episode near the end of the series. And everyone is like, well, this is where the series is completely lost any idea of what it's going to do. But I don't think people realize how big water skiing is in Wisconsin. It is still a huge thing in Wisconsin. Seriously, where my folks live in central Wisconsin, they have these lot of long, skinny lakes, and water skiing is huge. You got the Tommy Bartlett water skiing show where they like climb up on each other, and there's like 15 people in a pyramid, and then water skiing on the bottom at Wisconsin Dells. Water skiing is a huge deal in Wisconsin. It made sense that Happy Days, which was set in Wisconsin, would deal with that, but it's also like no one else knew how big a deal it was in Wisconsin. So it fit, but it felt so weird. And I've never seen anyone water skiing in jeans and a leather jacket. But if you can water ski in jeans and a leather jacket, then you can definitely play volleyball in jeans. So those are some of my favorite shows that took a big change within their series. I am still getting it. I am a little frustrated with Unforgettable. I like the series. I enjoy it. It's very much like just popcorn fare. It's fine, and whatnot. But the first season was so much smaller and like more about, I liked the supporting characters and they were just gone.
Yeah.
And one of the main plot lines is the main character Carrie trying to remember who killed her sister, and then they just dropped that entire thing for the second season. They're like, oh, now we're just working for the the mayor, and we're got all the fancy stuff in New York, and we're just never really going to talk about that again. So kind of a bummer, but it's always fun to see how things change over time. And you can check, like I said, go to our website, you'll get all the links. There's so many more shows on there. I was kind of surprised that none of these articles I could find even mentioned Unforgettable, which is ironic because it clearly got forgotten. It was canceled twice, so that's probably why. But it was such a stark change. I was like, wow, there has to be more of them. And I don't know that any of these shows, other than maybe the setting change for Angel, where they literally just decided to become a different business, would be as abrupt as Unforgettable. So that is the A-side. Check them out, check the links, and I'm sure there's stuff that I've forgotten. I'm going to talk about the fact that Lost was a great first season, and then they clearly just made it up for the rest. But they had no idea where they were going.
That seems to be the big consensus on Lost. Like, it started off so strong.
It was so good. And then by the end, they're like, okay, why not time travel? Cool.
Did they time travel in Lost?
Oh, yeah, they taught time travel, and yeah.
Oh.
Went back to the 60s at one point, and you got the hatch and you got the smoke monster. Like by the end, it was like nothing makes sense in this show. And everyone's like, oh, they built this world. I was like, no, this is literally like, it felt, and it maybe, I don't know if you did this when you were in middle school or high school, but we used to have a big like a spiral bound notebook that I would pass from, like my friend group would pass around. And everybody would either like write a sentence or write a paragraph. And so you would have 37 different authors trying to tell this story, but people just picking up their own. Like there was one guy who wrote a paragraph and then like didn't get the book back for 2 months and just went back to writing about his paragraph from like 2 months before. So there was no true through line of cognitive thought, no story that you could really understand. It was literally like, you threw everything into a blender and found out what it was, and that's what Lost did. They were like, you could tell that they were sitting in a writer room, and somebody's like, "What are we going to do this week?" And they're like, "Smoke monster, flag back in time." Somebody gets off the island, but then they got to go back to the island. Okay,
yeah,
that's probably one where, yes, there's no bad ideas in brainstorming, but it doesn't mean we have to use all the ideas.
Right. Exactly. All right. So there you go. That's the A-side.
That's the A-side.
So Adam, when you started your A-side, you said that Unforgettable had a certain distinction. It was a distinction of being canceled twice. Well, this week, our B-side has the distinction of being not just a serial killer, but also a mass murderer. Quite a different distinction, because usually it's one or the other.
Yeah, it's like a spree killing at one time, or it's a series of events that are all at different times.
He said, no, I'm going to take it all.
It's like, I'm just going to be an overachiever with the crime.
Yep. Yeah. So this week we are talking about the Amazon review killer, aka Todd Kohlhepp. So Todd Christopher Samsel was born March 7th in 1971 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He was born in Florida, but he was raised in South Carolina and Georgia, and we'll get to that. So his parents, Regina Tague, and his dad, I can't remember his dad's name, so forgive me. But anyway, they end up getting a divorce when he's 2 years old, and his mom ends up dating and marrying another man, Carl Kohlhepp.
Ironically, he probably didn't remember his dad's name either.
Right? Well, so his mom gets custody. She marries Carl in 1976. They don't have the best relationship, him and his stepdad. He often expresses the desire to go live with his biological father, who he hadn't seen, like you said, probably doesn't remember his name, because he hadn't seen him in several years. 8 to be exact. So he was a very troublesome child in nursery school. Keep in mind, nursery school, you're like 3, 4, 5, right? Before you go to preschool.
Yep.
He was like really aggressive towards other children, and he would like destroy their property. And he was even thrown out of the Boy Scouts.
Dang.
By the age of 9, he starts undergoing therapy. He's described as an explosive personality and also being really preoccupied with sexual content.
At the age of 9.
At the age of 9. And then he starts displaying a cruelty to animals. He shoots a dog with a BB gun, and he killed a goldfish with Clorox bleach. Now, we've talked about this. We talked about a couple weeks ago with the bedwetting and the fires. It's the McDonald triad, which is an indicator. Animal cruelty is one sign, the bedwetting, and then the fire setting, arson. So he's already displaying at least one aspect of the triad. His dad said later that Todd, like the only emotion that Todd was able to express was anger. So Todd, after this animal cruelty, he's sent to a psychiatric hospital in Georgia for about 3.5 months as an inpatient because of the animal cruelty and his inability to be able to get along with other children. So he gets out, he goes back to live with his mom and stepdad. Well, at the age of 12 in 1983, mom and stepdad are like, okay, look, we can't do this anymore. So they send him to live with his biological dad. Mom and stepdad are having their own issues. They separate, and it's just a whole lot for them.
And you know how that conversation went. Like, he's been saying, I want to go live with my dad for like years. And finally, mom was just like, fine.
Right. Go. Fine. If you want to go, go. Right. We've talked about FBI profiler John Douglas before. He's kind of the one responsible for like the behavioral analysis unit and all the profiling and stuff like that. He said that Todd was abused, abandoned. His grandfather hit him with a cattle prod, and he became the product of a dysfunctional family. Keep all of this in mind. So finally, he gets his wish. He goes and he lives with his dad. And after his mom, I forgot to mention this. After his mom got married, he had taken on his stepfather's last name, Colehelp. Well, when he goes and lives back with his dad, he takes on his dad's name of Samsel. So he's with his dad, and he's got some odd jobs. Him and his dad start working on some hobbies together because his dad had a hobby of collecting weapons, and he shares that with his son Todd. He even teaches him how to, quote, blow things up and make bombs. They're having a real grand time, right?
Yeah.
You would think. Well, Dad was a little, Papa was a Rolling Stone, had a lot of girlfriends, and he would spend his time with his girlfriends and not with his son. So Todd took that to heart, and their relationship deteriorated. So he's like, you know what? I want to go live with mom. Well, mom was like, well, see, the thing is, well, you can't because, so she kept making excuses why he couldn't come back. So at the age of 15, he's still living with his dad. On November 25th of 1986, he lures a young 14-year-old girl out of the house by telling her that her boyfriend wanted to talk to her. Now, they're in Arizona at the time, in Tempe, Arizona. He then kidnaps her, takes her back to his house by threatening her with a .22 caliber revolver. He ties her up, tapes her mouth shut, and he rapes her. When he's done, he walks her back home, but he tells her, if you tell anybody what I did to you, I'm going to kill your younger siblings. Of course, she tells. He's immediately arrested, like within hours. He's charged with kidnapping, sexual assault, and committing a dangerous crime against children. In 1987, his probation officer recommends that he be tried as an adult. He accepts a plea deal to the kidnapping charge, which means the other charges would be dropped. He's sentenced to 15 years in prison, and he is now a registered sex offender. According to court records, Todd Colehelp was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and he was noted as having an above average IQ. which averages anywhere, average range is 85 to 115. But like the smack dab, what is it? Median average is 100.
Okay.
So he was not diagnosed. He was assessed at having an IQ of 118, so above average.
In a way, you could call it diagnosed, because that's like being too smart's bad too.
Yeah, because I feel like when people are too smart, it's like they get bored easily and then they get into trouble.
That's fair.
So when Todd is asked, why did you do this to this young woman? He said, I was mad at my dad. He's mad at his dad for not being around. So he took it out on this young woman. The judge in the case said that he was, quote, very bright and should be advanced academically, but behaviorally and emotionally, he was dangerous and he didn't think that he could be rehabilitated.
Oh, wow.
His probation officer said in court documents that Todd felt the world owed him something. Todd's attorney in the case would later say that while defending him, he, quote, did not believe his client would go on to harm others in the future. Are you kidding me? You got a judge and a probation officer saying, yeah, but you're going to be like, oh no, he's a good kid.
And to be fair, like, what is the defense lawyer going to say?
True.
Like, there's no way he could be like, oh yeah, I knew this guy was psycho. I don't want to be around him, but hey, paid the bills.
That's true. So while he was imprisoned, of course, he gets into trouble for some violent behavior in the very beginning. But once he turns 20, he, I guess, starts to behave because there's no other records of violence or disobedience while he's incarcerated. Also, while he's incarcerated, none of his 3 parents visit him.
Ooh.
So he is released in August of 2001. He's 30 years old. He served 14 years. He moves to South Carolina, where his mom was living, to Spartanburg, South Carolina, and gets his driver's license for the very first time. Well, while he had been in prison, he had actually attended and graduated from Central Arizona College and gets a bachelor's degree in science. And then from January of 2002 to November of 2003, he worked as, this is once he's out, he worked as a graphic designer for a company in Spartanburg. And he actually began studying at Greenville Technical College in 2003. And he ends up transferring to the University of South Carolina Upstate, where he graduates in 2008 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration and Marketing. So he's got two degrees at this point. So he's got 2 degrees, and he actually had a really good job. I mean, you're working as a graphic designer, you got 2 degrees, like you actually made something of yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, in that interim time, while he was working on his degrees, and like when he first got out, he had gotten a job at Seven and Sons company, which was a sports apparel business. And he ended up getting that job because he lied on his resume. Yeah. Most jobs are like, hey, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Exactly. And he's like, no. And as we learned in Ant-Man, Baskin Robbins always finds out. Well, despite being registered as a sex offender, sex defender is a whole different kind of thing. Yeah, that's a horrible superhero right there. I'm the sex defender. I don't even want to know who would play that character. Anyway, so as a sex offender, he was still able to get a real estate license. And on June 30th of 2006, because he lied about being a sex offender on his application, he gets the license. And then once he gets his license, he actually goes on to build like this major firm. It was the TKA real estate agency. He's got dozens of real estate agents working for him. He's like running it from his house. I mean, this was a very successful business. He was recognized as a top-selling agent in the whole Carolina region. Oh, wow. Like, he literally made something from nothing. Yeah, he's got the 2 degrees, marketing and computer science. He's building a business. Yeah. It seems like, other than the lying to get all these jobs because no one knows he's a criminal, right? Seems like he's got things going pretty good. Got things going for himself, right? Well, Todd also gets a private pilot's license, and he is able to purchase several properties In May of 2014, for example, he purchased nearly 100 acres in Woodruff, South Carolina, located about 9 miles from the community of Moore. He paid $305,632. He then put up a chain link fence around the property that valued at like $80,000.
Yeah,
So,
that's a big property. That's a lot of links in that fence.
That's a lot. There was a woman who said that Todd had sold her home, and she said that he was like really outgoing and really professional. She did say that he would talk about firearms a lot, and of course he would kind of slip in some sexual innuendo during their conversations, but she's probably thinking typical man,
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah. However, another woman who had assisted one of employees described him as angry and condescending. A banker who had worked with him said that he liked to watch pornography at work a lot.
It's not really a place that you would think that would be appropriate.
No. Most jobs will fire you for that, but I guess if you're the boss,
yeah, make the rules.
He was known to frequent a Waffle House. Hey, look, I've been to Waffle House. I get it. He was known,
they're good.
They are good. They got that greasy spoon thing down.
So side note, my friends came and visited me. We lived in Bowling Green and it was late night. We went to the Waffle House. There's only one person working and she takes our order and then she's like, I'll be right back. She walks across the street. Then she starts working at the gas station counter and the guy who's at the gas station counter comes over to Waffle House to make the food. And when the food's done, they switch it back. They were playing this.
Real.
That is true. That is real. They were playing the system so good and it was delicious.
Oh, that's great. Oh my God, that's so good. Okay. So Todd was a frequent customer at the Waffle House. And they said that his behavior there was actually kind of disturbing to the waitresses to the point where a male cook had to start taking the orders from him.
So they would have had to go and get the guy across the street right away.
Yeah, exactly. She's flagging him down like, hey, come on. One of the waitresses we'll actually talk about here in a minute. Also, if you're wondering, in the very beginning of the episode, I told you his nickname. Do you remember?
Yeah, the Amazon review killer.
So he had a penchant for talking about murder, kind of, in what you would say is product reviews. So
he was dropping hints, but it was in like I really like this sandwich.
Yeah, so he had a wish list under the name Me of products that he would review. One product was a chainsaw. He said, works excellent. Getting the neighbor to stand still while you chase him with it is hard enough without having an easy to use chainsaw.
So like it seems like dark humor, maybe somebody's doing a bit.
Right. If you're not thinking somebody's really going to be on Amazon admitting to this stuff.
Yeah, you're like, oh, see, that's somebody's trying to be a comedian.
But if you look at his list, I mean, it does seem kind of sketchy because he also did reviews about knives, padlocks, gun accessories, targets, books about emergency surgery, and small shovels. For instance, he said about a small shovel, keep in car for when you have to hide the body and you left the full-size shovel at home. About a padlock, he said, solid locks, have 5 on shipping container. Won't stop them, but sure will slow them down till they are too old to care.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So first we're going to talk about his mass murder as opposed to his serial killing. So on November 6th of 2003, a customer walks into the Superbike Motorsports store, which was a motorcycle shop in Chesney, and they find 4 people dead inside. The owner, Scott Ponder, who was 30, service manager, Brian Lucas, who's 29, a mechanic, Chris Sherbert, who's 26, and owner Scott's mom. She was also a bookkeeper. Her name's Beverly Guy. She was 52. All 4 of them had died from multiple gunshot wounds. So apparently what happened is that Todd walks in and he kills Beverly Guy in the middle of the showroom. He then kills Brian Lucas in a doorway, Scott Ponder in the parking lot. According to Scott's wife, Todd was a disgruntled customer who had come in multiple times, and he was trying to return a motorcycle, but apparently the people at the shop kind of like laughed at him and they wouldn't give him his money back for his motorcycle. And I guess they kind of embarrassed him for not knowing how to ride one. I did miss Chris Sherbert. Chris Sherbert was also killed. He was shot in the back. So that's our mass murder. That goes unsolved for years. This happened in 2003. This isn't solved until 2016, but we'll get to that in a second. So on August 30th of 2016, Kala Brown and her boyfriend, Charles David Carver, were hired to clean Todd's, compound, his land. They were going to his giant property. They were going to remove brush and, just clean it up. Well, they disappear. They go missing. So of course they're reported missing. There's a big interest in their disappearance because there was posts on Facebook about their disappearance. So it sparks a lot of attention, and then it prompts some speculation, what's going on.
Yeah, stuff that would if my Facebook account or any social media account ever starts posting about how good pickles are, I've been kidnapped.
Right.
Because I have never said a good thing about pickles my entire life. They are the devil's stuff. So so if you see that, just know.
How are we friends? Because I love pickles.
Because then you get all the pickles.
No, that's true. Oh,
it works true.
That works out.
Yeah, but this is why I, for a long time, dated a vegetarian, because then we would get steak and potatoes, and I'd get 2 steaks.
And they get 2 potatoes. Okay, got it.
Brilliant.
So Spartanburg police, they of course ping the phones, and they discover that both of the phones last pinged on his property. So they go to his property, they do a search, and on November 3rd, now mind you, she's taken in August. On November 3rd, they find Kala Brown chained to a wall inside a storage container on the property.
Probably with all those locks he was talking about.
Exactly. They go, they check, they're on the property, they hear banging noises, and that's when they find her inside the storage container. They search the property some more. They find Charles David Carver's vehicle that was found in a ravine, and it was covered by brush. Charles David Carver's body was discovered with multiple gunshot wounds on the property as well. Kala says she actually witnessed her boyfriend being shot by Todd. Todd's mom, after he's arrested, he talks to her immediately. She says that he killed Charles David for having a really smart mouth, which would kind of go in line with what we learned about his mass murder earlier. He was embarrassed and they were laughing at him. So it was kind of I guess an ego thing.
It's anger issues.
Yeah. He also said that he also told his mom that he kept Kala captive and alive because she hadn't done anything wrong, so he didn't want to hurt her. Kala, however, tells police that right after she's rescued, she tells police that he had killed her boyfriend because he was mad at her.
And we know that he's killed people because he was mad at somebody else in the past, or done things in the past because he was mad. Yeah, the kidnapping.
Kala says that while she was in captivity, she was raped repeatedly, twice a day, and intimidated into not escaping after being shown the graves of not just Charles David, but his other victims. A continued search of the property, 2 more bodies are discovered on November 6th and 7th. They're later identified as husband and wife, Johnny Joe Coxey, who was 29, and Megan Lee McCraw Coxey, 26. Now, remember, there was a waitress, a server at the Waffle House that was uncomfortable with Todd, and they started having the male employees take his orders. Megan was one of the servers, or was that server. So both Johnny and Megan were reported missing on December 22nd of 2015. They were apparently hired by Todd to also work on his property. Megan had been shot in the head on December 25th or 26th, and Johnny had actually been killed before, about a week before, with a gunshot wound to his torso. According to the county coroner, they had to be identified via their tattoos.
Not a lot left.
No. So after his arrest, because he's arrested right after Kala is rescued. So after his arrest, he confesses to the shootings in the motorbike store in Chesney. He also confesses to the murders of the Coxies. But he says, I got to talk to my mom. I want to talk to my mom. I want to give her a photograph, and I want to be able to transfer some money into the college fund of a friend's child. So he says, I will confess to all of these, or I will make confessions, but these are my conditions. So after those conditions are met, then he makes the confessions about all the other killings. When he confessed to the Chesney shootings, the motorbike store, he said that he shot each of the victims in the forehead. They knew it was him because that was something that was never released to the public. That was a detail that the public never knew about. So they knew he was the actual killer. Searching his property, they found numerous weapons, including 9mm pistols that had suppressors on them. They found semi-automatic rifles and an insane amount of ammunition, like so much it's not even, they didn't even release a number on it. So of course, with background checks, we're supposed to have background checks, but there was never a background check found under Todd's name for the purchase of a firearm. So they think that he got the weapons illegally. He told his mom after his arrest that there were many other victims aside from the ones that he had confessed to. When his mom asked how many, he said, "You don't have enough fingers." Yeah.
Yikes.
So now remember, his very first victim, the thing that started it all, the kidnapping, was in Tempe, Arizona. He claims to have another victim in Arizona, someone that he shot. So on November 18th of 2016, the Tempe Police Department begins an investigation into his claim. They start going through old unsolved homicides for the past 3 decades. They said they're going to focus on cases between like 83 and 86 when he was there living with his dad. And they also said they were going to look at August of 2001 when he was released before he moved to South Carolina with his mom. On November 25th of 2016, police in South Carolina said that they had named Todd as a person of interest in an unsolved bank robbery that happened in 2003 and a triple homicide at that bank robbery. It was the Blue Ridge Savings Bank.
I mean, that would definitely help you get started on your business. You rob a bank.
Yeah. That crime was 6 months away from the Chesney shootings. That there was a 6 months time span in between the two. As of May 16th of 2018, though, there has not been a definitive link between those killings and Todd Kohlhepp. And he's denied any involvement in that case, which doesn't really say much because, I mean, he's a liar, a rapist, a murderer.
Yeah. So maybe don't take his word for it.
So in December of 2017, he wrote to the Spartanburg Herald Journal and said that there were more victims. He had more victims that had not yet been discovered.
Somebody wants a little bit more fame.
I think he wants some more attention. His attention was dying down and he's like, hey, I need some more. So he's charged with 4 counts of murder relating to the Chesney shootings, 1 count of kidnapping in relation to Kala's abduction. He's later charged with 3 additional counts of murder for the murders of Charles David Carver and then the Coxies. He's also charged with kidnapping and 3 counts of possession of a weapon during a commission of a violent crime. He goes to court in January of 2017, and his attorney waived his right to an appearance. It was reported by WLTX that the relatives of the victims of the Chesney shooting filed a wrongful death lawsuit against him. On December 1st, it was announced that Kala Brown had also filed a civil lawsuit against him. In May of 2017, He pled guilty to 7 counts of murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, 1 count of criminal sexual assault, and he was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He pled guilty in a plea bargain because it spared him from capital punishment. So in order to not get the death penalty, he said, yeah, I'm guilty of all of that.
Mhm.
At his sentencing, his defense attorney said there were no other victims and that he has repeatedly admitted that there are at least 2 other murders, though, since that time. As of August of 2018, he's yet to give authorities any further details if there is actually 2 other victims. He's currently imprisoned at the Broad River Correctional Institute. In August of 2020, some of his belongings went to auction, which you're thinking, ew, but the proceeds from the sales were donated to victims' families.
Well, and you would think that 100 acres, you can maybe get some money there.
That's true. That's true. So Kala, we have a little bit more on her. So, rapper Eminem.
Yes.
He actually wrote a song referencing Kala Brown. The song is called The Ringer, and it's off of his Kamikaze album. The opening line of the song states, "I'm off the chain like Kala Brown." Kala says it's a clever line that rhymed. I'm going to leave it at that. That was a statement that was released by her spokesperson. She said she's not offended by it. That's just Eminem's style of rap. If you know his style of rap, she said, there's nothing to be offended by. But there you go. That is the story of the Amazon review killer, Todd Kohlhepp.
And now, like, the worst part is I want to go find some of those reviews. I'm sure they're still up.
Oh, I'm sure they're still up.
Probably not something that I need to be Googling at this point, but yikes.
But there you go. That is the B-side.
I don't even know how to start.
That's it was yeah, when you have the distinction of being a mass murderer, a serial killer, and a rapist, you are like a whole nother level of ick.
And it seemed like he had so many like, it wasn't like he was successful. He had several degrees. He started this business, like, and clearly didn't do enough for him. So
yeah, like what is wrong in your head that you obviously have I would easily say $1 million business if you're buying property for $300 something thousand and a chain link fence for almost another $100,000. That's almost $500,000 right there. So you're making more than that. Yeah. You've got, like you said, you've got this land, you've got this business, you've got your private pilot's license. Like, what clicks in your head that you're like, nah, I gotta kill some people? I don't know.
Well, again, if you want to check out more of the links and details, if you want to probably find those Amazon reviews, you can check out all of our sources on our website, A-side, B-side podcast.square.site. We'll have all of Brooke's sources there. And of course, sources for the A-side with the shows that had major changes within their seasons. You could also, when you're there, you can check out any of the streaming services. We're on all of them. So you may be listening to us on Stitcher or Apple Podcasts or iTunes or Spotify. If you want to switch it up and use a different service, we got all of them right there. We would love if you would like and share on as many of those as you feel comfortable. We're going to have links to all of our social media as well. We've got some merch on there. You can buy Brooke a coffee because she's got to edit all of this. And if you have an idea for an A-side or a B-side or something that you would like us to look into, or a movie that you're like, am I the only person on earth that loves this? Maybe Adam does too. Just let us know. Reach out to us.
He does.
Odds are I've seen it because I don't sleep and I watch way too much stuff. Usually to just get my brain away from the murders that we talk about once a week. But yeah, check it all out on our website. And Brooke, did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it all covered.
Excellent. Well, that is episode 116, and we will see you or hear you, or you'll hear us. We'll have another episode next week.
Oh, thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Brooke.